Hello, this is Anthony. Let's walk and talk. So I'm here in Cusco, Peru, and I'm visiting a site called Sacsayhuaman. And as I walk through, we've done some videos. I didn't do a lot of videos, as we talked about, on if we were friends, we would have conversations that would span a multitude of topics. And well, as I'm here, this conversation spans the same sorts of topics that we would discuss if we were in viewing the images around Greece or around Angkor Wat or Egypt or any of these ancient sites. You see, there's a lot of things that the ancient stories talk about, but then when you tie in the modern man's description of what they think has occurred or what's happened, and you try to tie timelines into these things just don't seem like they add up. And here's what I mean by that. As we go through here, it's pretty clear, especially on the other side. This is similar to Machu Picchu, where there are extremely large stones that we're told were placed by hand, and we were told that they were carved into place, and that these people were not highly technologically advanced people, that they walked around in loincloths with ornate items or colors. And that's all we're told. You see, but when you visit these sites firsthand, there's a different story. And if you're open, you can hear the story. You can hear it speak to you. You see, it's not speaking to you in terms of trying to give you definitive answers. It's speaking to you in terms of the feel, the logic, the common sense around some of these things. You see, even as I traverse this, what looks like a large amphitheater, you'll see the littler rocks and stones placed in here. Except for what you're not seeing is the undergirth and the stones above, which are very clearly not the same architectural style. And when you see that, the implication is that potentially there are actually two different architectural styles that are in place, meaning that maybe this was a much older structure, and then some people came in and they saw the structure and they thought, hey, this might be a good place for us to build a society, and so they did what they did, or used how their ways of building, and tried to match what they had in here, because they weren't able to lift some of these great stones into place. You see, and when you understand that, you can understand that it would be no different than if there was an apocalypse and you and I were left over and we didn't know construction or how to build upon existing construction, and we came across a city, say like Manhattan. Well, we would just build onto the existing structures in the manners and with the tools and ability that we had, and then that's what we'd have. And then maybe a couple hundred years or 1,000 years later, somebody might come through and they might see these big scrapers with little grass hut tops on them, and they might say, oh, well, this is how they lived. But that would be an inaccurate description, you see. Even if you go to the standpoint of saying these were more primitive people and they just learned things such as how to use levers to lift heavy stones, which some people would say, oh, well, they just use levers to lift these heavy stones. It doesn't require a lot of manpower. Okay, that's all fine and great, but that requires and shows advanced knowledge and understanding, because we didn't even have levers in our, until much later in our current iteration. And what you also begin to understand is that these ancient folks, and we're going to see a little example here as we're walking by, I'll point it out up top. I don't know if you see up here how all of these stones are fit together perfectly. They're not fit in squares, they're fit in angles and interlocking. And the reasoning for that is because there's so much seismic activity in the area, there's so much volcanic and and earthquakes in the area, that having that built in that manner allows for the integrity of the building to remain. However, building stacked on top, that doesn't necessarily have the same length and depth of ability for that architecture to stand. Again, it takes great knowledge. So you see, even when you go back and you view these things, what you're going to suggest is you're going to suggest that, well, maybe it was trial and error. Maybe it was trial and error, but how long did it take to get to that point? And even in getting to that point and understanding that they started choosing to use these very, very large blocks, why? For what purpose? You see, and then again, another thing that, people try to come up with ideas for answering some of these questions, but some of these doorways are huge. They're, again, 15 feet tall, very similar to the 15 feet tall doorways in Angkor Wat. And then people will tell you, oh, well, that's because the gods were taller than them. Well, what did we do as a worldwide civilization who never interacted? Did we all somehow get a memo to say our gods are 15 feet tall, so we should all build our doorways 15 feet tall? You see, things like this thing, they don't answer questions. They just actually create more questions. And some people, they say, well, it's futile. Why even go down that road? Well, some of us are curious. We want to understand, because you see the current narrative becomes it becomes in some ways like religion. Archaeology creates its own dogma, meaning they come up with, and everyone agrees on what they think happened, and when presented with alternative theories, which may better answer the question, or which may cause the community to have to change their thought and belief process around it, they're very resistant to do it. Now you're going to say, you're going to push back, but we've talked about this in the past. You see, we're going to talk about the idea of Pangea. And the idea of Pangea was first introduced by a German scientist in 1912 to the scientific community. And he was laughed at. And he was laughed at for about 50 years. Take that back. About a little over 40 years, actually 43 years, I think, until roughly, I think, 1955, when the scientific community got together and agreed, oh, yes, you know what? That's actually what happened. But you see, as a human, why is it that we're so intuitive that we somehow know different than that? I've mentioned this channel as being a child and remembering as a child looking at the map of the world thinking, oh, it's a puzzle. See, all these pieces fit together. You see, why as a child, intuitively, would I be drawn to that? But a scientific community, they would completely resist the idea for, 42 years or something like that. You see, this is part of the issue that we have. We have people who come out and they become experts in certain cultures or certain sites. And then when they become experts in the culture and the site, then they come up with their own ideas of how these things occurred. And they don't use any kind of, seldom do you hear any kind of, I guess for lack of a better word, I would say contamination, but, like cross-cultural discussion about these things. It's as if, there's a belief system that these people all just, evolved and all these ideas, which are very similar around the world, all just happened at the same time with the same group of people. There's such a resistance to believe that there was any sort of a society that was highly technologically advanced before us. Why would that be? Well, I can tell you why. Ego. We don't want to believe that a society could become very advanced and then it could be wiped essentially off the face of the earth, because then our ego would kick in and go, well, could that happen to us? You see, if we want to know the truth about our history, we have to ask the hard questions. And if we're going to have to ask the hard questions, we have to want to really, truly know what the truth is. Taking everything else out of it, taking religion out of it, taking the current belief out of it, taking an understanding that in some cases, our current scientific understanding may not even answer those questions. We have to take those things and set them aside and really think and decide, do we want to know what the truth is, and is the truth plausible? You see, if our mind can make things up and believe certain aspects of life, why is it so hard to believe that this hasn't been a part of human consciousness for all of the existence of humans? See, logically and plausibly, and from a common sense perspective, it would be. People 10,000 years ago would be just as curious as people are now. You see, I mean, I will even point to, and I'm joking about the people are people. I've talked about this in the past, how even in Rome, they found carvings of people from Roman days, like Roman soldiers who wrote graffiti, carved graffiti in the walls in Greece, which would state the same types of things that we do now. Marcus was here, just like we would put somebody was here today. We would do the same acts of graffiti. So have we really changed a whole lot from a consciousness perspective? I think the answer is, I think not. And so if we begin to understand that that is the case, then we can start to open up and answer, is it plausible that we got further along at some point, and at some point left untouched, we will get further along as well? You see, I think these are all questions that are really, in some cases, individualistic. I think we need to look inside to decide whether we really want truth, we really want answers, or whether we would just rather walk along blindly and accept the narrative. But what say you? How do you feel about this? Do you think the narrative is correct, or do you think that there's things that either we know and we're not, and it's not being shared, or we're willfully ignoring? As always, if you enjoyed this content, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm truly grateful. Until I talk to you again, peace, love, light. I hope you have the most amazing day.